All right. So, Diamond Sutra, part 5, I believe. What I'm going to talk about today is Tathagata, suchness, and Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, which are words that show up a lot in here. Tathagata shows up all the time, and I'm just going to pick out some places where it shows up. And what do these mean? Why do these words show up all the time, and what do they mean? Tathagata shows up all the time. Section 2, most rare world honored one. The Tathagata is skillfully mindful, etc., etc. Virtuous men and virtuous women initiate the mind of Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. How should their minds dwell? Tathagata is skillfully mindful, perfectly instructing, etc., etc. Section 5, towards the end. Everything with form and appearance is merely illusion. If all form and appearance are seen as illusion, the Tathagata will be perceived. If all form and appearance are seen as illusion, the Tathagata will be perceived. What does that mean? Going on down section 6, end of that page, it's almost at the end of section 6, but the end of that page, even the Dharma must be cast aside. How much more? So I don't know why I underlined that one. Section 7, has the Tathagata attained anything by Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi? Does the Tathagata in fact expound the Dharma? Goes on, so I'm on page 5 here, which is halfway through section 14. Saputi, the Tathagata's words point to the true and correspond to reality. It's not that they are true, they point to the true and they correspond to reality. They are as such, and are neither deceitful nor heterodox. Saputi, the Dharma which the Tathagata attained is neither real nor illusory. Section 17, going on down a little bit. This recurs, you see this many times through here. In actuality, there is no Dharma called attaining Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. And then Saputi asks, Tathagata asks Saputi something, and Saputi says, if I understand the Buddha's meaning, when he was with Dipankara Buddha, there was no such Dharma with which he attained Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. And the Buddha replied, just so, just so. And Master Nanhui Chan says that is a huatu, which is Korean for, or Chinese for cone. So in Korean, they call them huatu. So just so, just so. That's one of those, it's a breakthrough phrase. If you can really understand that just so, you get the whole thing. Going on further down into the paragraph, the Tathagatas and all Dharmas are as such. As such. What is this? One in particular I want to make sure I get, and I don't see it further. I must have underlined this. Oh, here we go. End of section 30, it says, if someone should say, it's as if the Tathagata comes and goes, sits and lies, this person does not understand the meaning of what I say. The reason is that having not whence to come, nor whither to go, is called the Tathagata. Not come, thus gone, not having whence to come from or whither to go, is the Tathagata. And then a little earlier, section 26, one who looks for me in appearance or pursues me in sound follows paths leading astray and cannot perceive the Tathagata. You can't find him, or her, or it, or them. All right, there's several more of those I could find, and I'll probably get back to them later. But what is this about? Tathagata, suchness, and Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. First, a little about terminology, and we'll do them in a different order. So, Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, we come across this a lot. Attara means superior or excellent. Anuttara means without anything that is superior, without anything that is more excellent. It's kind of like in Islam, Allahu Akbar does not mean God is great, it means God is greater. Brutalizing Arabic, I'm sure, but it's whatever you find, God is greater. And Anuttara has that same valence. There is nothing greater than this. Samyak Sambodhi, Sam is completely. Samyak is just this excellent perfection, and Sambodhi is complete awakening, enlightenment, knowledge. So it's just not, it's this cluster of superlatives is wrong, because superlatives, this is why it's Allahu Akbar. God is always greatest, not God is greatest. Whatever you put something as the greatest, you can always posit something more. This is, in comparative terms, this is the most superior. There is never anything greater. Suchness. There is a word that shows up elsewhere in other Mahayana sutras, which is yatha bhutam, which is seeing things as it is. And Thich Nhat Hanh, those of you who've read Thich Nhat Hanh, he talks a lot about things as it is. And it's a sentence that, if you think of it grammatically, doesn't make sense. Things as it is. But it's precisely that grammatical inaccuracy, or that grammatic inconsistency, that I did not press record, did I? Let me start recording. Oh no, I did. Doesn't matter anyway. It's precisely that grammatical inconsistency which exposes the deeper meaning. Because you can't land on it. It's not a thing as it is, it's things. And you can't say things as they are, because that implies that things are things. There's this oneness and manyness coming together. And it's being expressed in this things as it is. Suchness is just, it's just things as it is. It's without any perception. It's without overlaying it with anything. It's just things as it is. And Tathagata, I brought this book in here, which is a commentary on a sutra out of the Pali Canon, just for grins. So this, it's commentary on one of the, I think it's the first sutta in the Digha Nikaya, which is the first of the collection of the Pali Canon, which is the Brahmajala Sutta. And in that commentary, there's a section on the meaning of the word Tathagata. The Exalted One is called the Tathagata for 8 reasons. Number 1 is because he has thus come, Tathagato. Because he has thus gone, Tathagato. Because he has come to the real characteristic of dharmas, Tathalakhanam Agato. You can see they're all just word plays. They're just playing around with the same root. Because he's awakened to real dharmas, etc., etc. There's 8 of them. The most obvious roots of Tathagata are Tatha, which is thus or in this way. Agata, which means come, or Gata, which is gone. And in Sanskrit, in Pali and Sanskrit, words are conflated, where a lot of words will end in an A or begin in an A, and you can conflate them and you join them, and the A is a negation, so you've got both. So another one is bhava bhava. That's conflating bhava and abhava. So you lose that middle letter. The Satipatthana Sutta is Sati Upatthana or Sati Patthana. You don't know which it is. It's got 2 meanings: foundations, or what's the other? I can't remember the other word. The 4 foundations. It's here, but I can't get the word. But they're different valences. There's a lot of these word plays. So first blush, Tathagata is a word play on thus come, thus gone. You don't know whether he's come or gone. And obviously, come is here to teach. Gone is woken up. But also within this Tathagata, you've got tatata, or tatata, which is thus or such. It's just suchness. So tatata is suchness. So you've got that wrapped around this as well. So it's pointing at this suchness. And then we're going to a little bit. So those are the words. I'm going to get into how am I going to go about it? So I thought I'd structured it, but I'm going to change the way I'm going about this. So what happens, I hope, when you chant this sutra, is it shifts from words that don't quite hang together and words that are intellectually incomprehensible to more of a mystical kind of feeling. There's kind of an acceptance that the words don't quite make sense, but there's a feeling of openness, a feeling of spaciness, a feeling of things not landing or not sticking. It's very mystical. The Theravadan tradition, the Pali Canon, is very grounded and very practical. And where I'm going to go with this is talk about those two as really about the same thing, but approaching it. It's like if you go into Christianity, you've got the four canonical Gospels, and you've got three, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and then you've got John, which is the mystical one. It's a little more floating and out there. And in a sense, in an important sense, the Mahayana is doing the same. It's taking the Theravadan teachings and moving into the mystical with them. So hopefully as you just have the practice of chanting this, you have the sense of moving into the mystical. So with that, there are two major schools within Mahayana Buddhism, which is taking that mystical and trying to ground it on philosophy. I'll give a high-level sketch, and then we'll see how this lands in the words. The first of them is called the Madhyamika, which means middle way, and that basically it's a doctrine that takes its origin from the teachings of Nagarjuna in 2nd century CE, and it is talking about not the middle way between the extreme of eternalism and nihilism, or existence and non-existence, which is simply what the Buddha taught in the Pali Canon anyway. But it's taking that and very firmly talking about those two extremes and landing on this middle way. And it approaches it in the Pali Canon. It's approached in a very structured way, which I'll talk about in a minute. And in this tradition, it's talked about much more in just neti. It's just constantly trying to push us away from landing on anything. Just push us away from landing on anything. And then the other school, and these two come out of the same root, is Yogacara, which is mind only. And what that is saying is, and this is where a lot of the double negation comes from as well, everything is a projection of mind. So if we start this with small mind, this mind here, this bell actually isn't a bell. What I see here is it's a projection. And if you think about it, yeah, of course. Because the fact that I can see a bell is because I have a reference point of a bell up here. And if I didn't have that, I'd be totally unable to see a bell. I'd be like the baby who sees something and goes, they don't know what it is. It's just there's an engagement with the world. That's all it is. It's just an engagement with the world. That I see a bell is because I'm projecting what's here. And if we move from this sack of skin and bones to the bigger I, to the bigger mind, capital M mind, then everything is a projection of that mind. So this is a non-personal mind. Everything is a projection of mind. And this is another technique for causing us to just not land on anything. To not take anything, to not recognize objects as objects, to not recognize things as things, to not even recognize verbs and actions as verbs and actions, because again, those are only verbs and actions with particular meaning, because the meaning is a projected meaning. It's a meaning that's here. It's not saying there's nothing out there, it's not nihilism, but it is saying that What's out there is absolutely not what we think it is, because what we think it is all in here. So in the Pali tradition, and to me this whole thing derives from directly from the Pali Canon, and most obviously from the Kaccayana Sutta, which Buddha, it's a sutta in which Buddha says, avoiding the two extremes of existence and non-existence, the Buddha teaches the middle way, and the middle way is simply dependent arising, dependent co-arising, dependent origination, dependent co-arising, which is from ignorance comes fabrication. So because we don't understand the way things are, we start seeing bells and feeling pains and whatever. Consciousness and name and form come together, and then we go through this escalating series of senses and contact and feeling tones, craving and clinging. I want a cookie, yummy, that's tasty, I want some more, more. There's a birth comes out of that, and then from that comes old age, death, suffering, pain, grief, lamentation, pain and despair, this whole mass of suffering.
Where are you?
So that middle, and then the middle way is actually undoing all of that, saying if we don't cling, then there's no, if we don't crave, there's no clinging. If we don't identify feeling tones, there's no craving, and it undoes it all the way back down. If there's no ignorance, then none of this happens. So just wake up, just see so the middle way is precisely undoing that, but it's going to exactly the same place as these two schools, which is recognizing at its root that nothing is what we think it is. Everything arises out of causes and conditions. Everything out of causes and conditions. And the root of those causes and conditions is absolutely ineffable. So the lights up here, the lights come on when you switch the light switch on, and then they go off when you turn the light off. So they've come and they've gone, but have they really gone? What's happened there? It's a manifestation of electricity, and the electricity is there. It's just there. Yeah, this room is full of it. Doesn't mean if I wave my hand around I'm going to get an electric shock. The room is full of electricity by any reasonable measure. It doesn't come or go at all. What comes or goes is the nature of this particular awareness. It's the me that comes into this and goes out of it. The only thing that comes and goes is ego. So this is where Tathagata, so actually I'm going to, Tathagata, there's a couple of other big words, which I won't worry about. Tathagata is, we think of the Tathagata as being the Buddha, but actually the Buddha, as in thus come, thus gone, what this is pointing at is from the Buddha's experience, there is no person, there is no identity. It's just Buddha nature, as it's called. So this is one of the big words, right? Buddha nature, Dharmakaya. So at the point of waking up, from that side, we still see a person, but from the side of that person waking up, the person's gone. There's no more identification with the person. There's just this nature of being, suchness. So, the lights, where do they go? They come out of that suchness and they go back into that suchness. Only when I say they come out of that suchness and they go back into that suchness, what do I really mean? The light's not coming at all. There's nothing there that's happening. It's this sensory experience. It's the me that's grabbing onto something and creating an experience out of it. And then that experience goes. But if there's no me there holding on to any of this stuff, that is a completely different valence. And it's just part of this sea of suchness. The famous metaphor that's used a lot is the ocean and the waves. The sea is there, the water's there regardless. When the ocean is disturbed by the wind, you get the waves. And the waves, it's like the light's coming on. It's like my leg hurting. It's like the taste of a glass of water. It's like me being a bill. So that happens when I show up. But when I disappear, I no longer identify as a concrete me. Those events are also disappearing as discrete events. There's just this, there's much more this settled peace. And this is what we settle into when we settle into our meditation. We can settle into this stillness. And it's not, what's happening is, if you think about it in these terms, right now, we're concentrating on words and ideas, and we're caught up in these stories. So we've got identities happening and interesting things. They're fun, they're interesting things that are happening. But when we settle down, that identification is going away, and we're settling back down, and that awareness is settling back down into a much more still and quiet and peaceful place that is before the arising of all of this stuff. Which, if you go back to the dependent causation, before all these links in the chain start happening. And that's where peace happens. And from that place, if we can reside in that place, what we can see is the ephemerality of all of these arisings. And that calling this a bell, yeah, there's something useful in calling it a bell, but in any way identifying with or creating any identity or thingness around calling that a bell is, number one, creating suffering, because once I start doing that, then that has to come to an end, and that causes suffering. It has to leave the dukkha. Number two, it's discriminating within which that is discriminating against that which is beyond discrimination. This is just suchness. If it's seen very clearly as it is, this is Buddha. This is Buddha nature. There's an absolute identity in this language between the Tathagata, suchness, Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, Buddha nature, Buddha. These are different ways of describing the same essence. And the Diamond Sutra, as I've said before, it's an instruction manual to tell us how to wake up to that truth. And I hope you're beginning to find as you chant it, it becomes practical in that just the chanting itself loosens up some of these attachments and allows us to start to float off into this more mystical experience of the words of the world.